Yeah, I think it's important because a lot of us are told, okay, don't eat sugar, don't eat this, don't eat that. And we're kind of like, okay. But at the end of the day, if you're not eating enough micronutrients, these vitamin A and magnesium and all of these nutrients that literally make your body go, run your metabolism, your immune system, your mental health. If we're missing those, we're not going to feel great. We're not going to have that vitality. And so we have to add the foods in as well that are really teeming with the nutrients that our body actually requires. And so I think organ meats are at the top of that list for sure. Really high quality animal products. There's this push away from meat, but it is one of the most bioavailable sources of protein, amino acids, the precursor to our neurotransmitters. These nutrients are in, a way that our body can absorb. And so really high quality animal products, those are absolutely superfoods. And then greens, right? Like vegetables, fruits that are, eating from the rainbow, all of those different colors and those pigments, they're actually, they're acting in different ways in our body, giving us different benefits, feeding different bugs in our guts.
Welcome to the Soaring Child Podcast, where parents of children with ADHD learn tips and tricks to help their child soar at home, at school, and in life. We feature interviews with experts, medical professionals, and parents just like you who are learning how to reduce ADHD symptoms using food and other natural strategies. Because children with ADHD deserve to soar just like every other child. I'm Dana Kay, your host. Hello, parents. This is Dana Kay here with another edition of the Soaring Child Podcast. I don't know about you, but when I go to the supermarket and look at all the different options for when purchasing meat products, I get so overwhelmed. Do I focus on ones marked natural, grass-fed, organic, hormone-free, antibiotic-free? The number of different labels sends me into a tailspin. If you can relate in any way, then you definitely want to stay tuned for today's episode. My guest is an ingredient expert. She holds a master's in holistic nutrition, a certified eating psychology coach, and a certified FDN practitioner. She is also the co-founder of Paleo Valley, which is an organic whole food supplement and paleo snack food company that prioritizes nutrient density and food quality. In 2018, she took things a step further and launched her second business with her husband, Wild Pastures, which is a regenerative, pasture-based meat delivery service. Wild Pastures makes supporting sustainable agriculture and local small farms easy for consumers. She lives in Boulder, Colorado with her husband and their son, Maverick. Now it is time to welcome Autumn Smith to the Soaring Child. Hi, Autumn. How are you?
Hi, Dana. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. It's such an honor.
Yeah, thank you for coming and being on the podcast. I was actually really, really excited about having you on. Paleo Valley is honestly one of my favorite companies, and that I suggest so many of the families that I work with to explore and to use your products, because they are just so clean, and they're made from food, which is the best. They're not in some synthetic laboratory and bringing it that way. And so that's why so much I love, what you do. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you, Dana. And I love your mission as well. And I'm, again, just honored to be able to talk with you today. And I really appreciate your kind words.
Fantastic. So tell me, let's start with, why. I'd love to know, why did you sort of create Paleo Valley? What made you become so passionate about it?
It's crazy because I grew up as a dancer, and so always been fitness minded, moved to Los Angeles, did some dancing, and then kind of got swept up in fitness because, do you know who Tracy Anderson is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she takes dancers and helps them become fitness trainers. Anyway, I looked really fit my whole life, but I was always suffering from digestive issues since maybe the age of 9. And so debilitating that I just get pain in the middle of the night. I'd be bloated. It was unpredictable. And when that wasn't addressed, it kind of spiraled into mental health and anxiety and depressive struggles, because in the small town I grew up in, they didn't really know that unresolved digestive issues, A, could lead to mental health issues, and B, could actually be treated with food, which was interesting at the time. So I just kind of continued along this trajectory, trying to get well through fitness. And it wasn't until my husband and I moved in together and he saw the pain on a regular basis and said, sweetie, you look good. You don't feel good. Like, we've got to fix this. And so he got on the Google machine and he saw that some people were using food back in 2006, 2007. And I said, no way. I've been to doctor after doctor. I've tried the psychiatric meds. But when we cleaned up our diet, it was 30 days where my digestive symptoms were gone. Mm-hmm. And then over the course of the next year, my mental health became so profoundly different that I was like, this is something powerful and I need to understand it. So I quit my job as the celebrity fitness trainer and went back to school to study it. While I was on a world tour for my last assignment for Tracy Anderson, I just started to realize that maintaining this sort of diet, if you don't want to cook 3 meals a day and you want to be on the road and you're busy, it's not realistic. And so when I got back to the United States, my husband and I said, we've got to make the tools for people to be able to maintain something like this, because people were kind of already carrying the education piece forward. And we thought, we'll just meet consumers where they are. And that's why we kind of got into it. And, the product line kind of developed again in accordance with our life and stuff. But that was the original goal. I just wanted people to feel the way that I did when I had that health transformation. And I wanted it to be easy.
Yes. And I honestly haven't actually ever heard that story before. So thank you for sharing it. And, it's amazing how you can turn something. And I think it's a lot of health practitioners, natural health practitioners in particular, turning their own struggles into being able to help other people. And that's exactly, what I did with my son. But I love the fact that you've created these products that are easy. And so there is such a need for them, especially for the families that are listening today, all the families that I work with having kids, they don't want to be in the kitchen 24 hours a day. They don't want to, how do you find those quick, easy snacks that are actually good for you? And so that's, your mission is amazing. And that's why I was so excited to have you on. Now, let's talk about kids. What have you really learned about sort of that link between food and kids' health in particular and behavior? Since becoming a mum, obviously your experience was before you were a mum. How have things changed since you've become a mum?
Yeah, this is one of the things I was most excited about. Is like, oh my gosh, if I understand, I got in a lot of trouble as a teen. I mean, a lot. I was kicked out of my parents' house before I even graduated high school. And I think my behavioral issues, some of them were tied to the turmoil, the physical, illness and mental illness I was struggling from. But anyway, since I become a mom, I've noticed there's just this profound relationship, right, between your physical, your mental health, and what you're putting in your body. Yeah. And so it's not that I ever am under the delusion that I have all of the control, right? Our kids are who they are. They're going to have their good and they're going to have their bad moments. But I found that through a few, simple dietary practices, prioritizing protein, stabilizing blood sugar, minding their micros, and, just really teaching them about the role of food in their behavior, their physical and mental wellness, has been an invaluable tool for me. And my son even had some neurological symptoms come up that we've actually been able to control through diet and supplementation and all of that. So I thank my lucky stars every single day that I just have this knowledge. And again, that's why I'm so passionate about sharing it too, because parenthood is already hard enough, right?
It sure is.
If we can find an area of control or empowerment and then again, teach our kids to have that themselves, I think it's so important.
100%. You're setting them up for a lifelong, healthy life, really, at the end of the day, a healthy mind, a healthy body, and, to be as successful as they can be. And, I think it's so important. And that's exactly, what we obviously teach. I work with just kids or the families of the kids. But what I really want to dive into today is more about why finding quality ingredients is so important and, what ones we need to specifically look for, because that education for a lot of families listening today, it's not widely shared. It's not shared by the government. And so I think it's really, going to be helpful for a lot of our listeners today to really dive deeper. What are those quality ingredients? Why is it important to source them, and how they determine why is this product healthier for them than this product?
Right. Well, I always say if you give the body what it needs and take away what it doesn't, it can do amazing things, right? So when you're looking for ingredients, our whole company is founded on the basis of whole foods, because there's just a magic, there's a synergy, there's a beauty that we don't even fully understand yet when we're eating whole foods. Somewhere along the line, companies have come along and educated us that processed foods and plant-based foods, these are the foods we need to be consuming. But when we take a step back, we've been eating whole foods for, millions of years, and they've done us a great, they've made us into the vibrant, social, very intelligent beings. So when it comes to high quality ingredients, whole foods, that's where I start, right? And so when it comes to animal products, there's a lot of different flavors in the industry about how they're raised. About 95% of animals today will you find at a grocery store raised in confinement. There are a number of issues there, added hormones, glyphosate exposure. They use things like ractopamine, and then, and not all of it ends up in the meat, but some of it does, and there's varying, we can talk about each one differently if you want, but then there's also what they're being fed is changing the nutritional profile of their product as well. And we can talk about that more. So grass-fed and finished beef raised on a regenerative farms, best case scenario. And we'll talk about it if that's not possible or how to access that. Pastured pork, chicken, turkey, pastured eggs is great. And then, just inquiring about the practices. There's a lot of tricky labels. We can get into that too. Yeah. And when it comes to whole foods, organic is ideal, non-GMO if you can't access it. And then when it comes to like processed products, we just want to, if you can't pronounce something on a label, right? If your grandmother wouldn't have eaten it, it doesn't mean it's necessarily dangerous and bad for you, but it might be, right? It's a good indication that it could be. And there's a lot of those ingredients lurking in our food supply today. So sugar, I know there's this thing with ADHD that it doesn't necessarily cause it, but for some kids, it seems to be more problematic.
Exacerbated. Yes.
It does. And then when it comes to additives, like food colorings, different things like that, for some kids, for a percentage of the population, that is a big deal. And so we really kind of want to get rid of additives, focus on the best quality source of whatever you can find that you're having. And that's organic, non-GMO, and then all of the animal products that we're talking about. But I just think eat as close to nature as you possibly can. We've all been taught that processed foods, they're just part of life and kids need to have them. But I don't think kids' diets and adult diets need to be different, especially at a time when they're growing and they need more energy and nutrients than we do as adults. And so, just high quality ingredients. That is why our company, they call us the ingredient snobs. And I have a love-hate relationship with that term because I don't want
I love it.
Yeah. We are snobs, but we want it to be, also, we really work on accessibility too, keeping the cost really low. So, I think that, the more we can give our body those whole foods in the highest quality possible form that we can find and leave out all of the other additives that literally infiltrated our food supply, the better off we're going to be.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I do want to dive into the different types of meats because I think that, that's something that's not really talked about. You go into the supermarket these days and you see natural chicken, or this chicken doesn't have hormones, but is it still good? You see so many types of different beef and people think, USDA beef, that's the best. But really, at the end of the day, it's not. And so can we dive deep into the different types of meat and chicken just so, listeners out there can actually be aware when they actually go to the supermarket as to what is important to look for, what is actually just marketing, because a lot of it is just marketing.
It's so true. Okay, so when it comes to beef, we'll start with beef.
Yes.
When it comes to labels, you're going to want to get grass-fed is not a highly regulated term, but it is something, right? So if you can find 100% grass-fed, That's awesome. But it won't assure that it has never been fed grain or anything like that. But I think that's a good place to start. Regeneratively raised grass-fed meat is the best way to go. The American Grass-Fed Association comes in and actually third-party certifies, meaning actually checks every 15 months on the practices happening there. So if that's important to you, then that sort of certification can kind of get you that guarantee. And then we also have things we want to not look for. Made in the USA. You would think that would mean it's processed and raised in America. Not necessarily true. It can actually be raised in New Zealand and come to America and be processed in America and then be called American made in the United States. So that's not always assuring anything.
I want to just touch on that quickly, and I'm going to interrupt you. But is being made outside the USA necessarily a bad thing?
Ooh, I love that question. So when we started this company, we would have said no, because we want to keep the standards high, right? And so, yeah, New Zealand, other countries definitely have better standards. But what I think we're missing when we do that is what we've learned is really important through the pandemic, and that's that food sovereignty, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we want to have a really great supply here. And even better, we want to incentivize American farmers to engage in these practices like grass-fed and regenerative agriculture. And when we're outsourcing it, and then we also have to think about the carbon footprint. It might be better quality, but it's also traveling a very long distance to get to us. And what is that really doing? And are we missing the opportunity to rehabilitate the soil if these farmers are using regenerative practices? And are we having a country where the people who are owning the land are invested in the land, right? Because there's a different kind of commitment there, and that creates jobs. And like, for me, I'd rather buy something that is being made in America, create that food sovereignty and security, give Americans jobs, rehabilitate American soil, and reduce the carbon footprint. So I'd say yes.
Yeah. And I think that like, you know, it's really interesting to hear about it from that point of view, because when you are putting back into those American farmers, you're probably going to get better quality, better farming practices, hopefully more people turning towards the grass-fed, grass-finished. So thank you for that explanation. And I was just sort of saying it more so I'm from Australia, and Australian quality beef is, you know, really, really fantastic because we have some really good farming. But living in America, I completely agree with what you just said. So let's go back to so we've talked about the beef, and we don't necessarily like having grass fed is obviously good, but having it grass finished as well is probably the best. Is that right?
I believe that is the best. And you can get a little more assurance with the 100% grass fed and finished. But the only way you kind of have a real certification or guarantee is with the American Grass-Fed Association. They kind of come in and monitor that for you. When it comes to natural, like you said, natural means nothing. It means that there was no additives added after it was processed, but it doesn't tell you anything about how the animal was raised. And then also when it comes to beef, organic is a start, but organic cows can still be in confinement, and they can still, not their whole lives, but for part of their lives. And then they can also be fed corn and soy that is organic. And so that will then change the fatty acid profile and sometimes the antioxidant content of their final product. And on beef, when it comes to nutrient, we can talk about this later if you want to, but what researchers are finding now and what I'm going to be involved in for my dissertation is kind of monitoring the secondary compounds and how they change depending upon how the animal's fed, which is a really fascinating, new area of study. But so beef, yes, 100% grass-fed and grass-finished. If you can find it, that'd be awesome. Organic, it is not the same, but might be better than conventional.
Well, that's a good point to make. So is grass-finished, grass-fed, grass-finished organic, or no? Do you have to then find organic grass-fed, grass-finished?
Yeah, that's a good question. So not all the time, but what you'll find is oftentimes if the farmers are doing this 100% grass-fed and finished, they're not going to be using chemicals or antibiotics or hormones. And many of these farmers, if they're in your area, can't afford the certification. Organic certification is really expensive. And so when we started our company, we saw that. We met these farmers. We're like, okay, we're going to meet you where you're at, and we're going to just do the grass-fed thing. And we still do. And we also use American Grass-Fed Association certification. But no, yes, sometimes they could be. It's just kind of, you have to kind of inquire about their practices and get to know them. It doesn't guarantee they're not necessarily, but I've found that most of them aren't.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I always suggest to families, go to your local farmers market, talk to the farmers, because it is very expensive to get that organic certification, but they probably still, a lot of them are still following it, but just can't afford to get that certification. So moving on to chicken, chicken is obviously a big part of a lot of Americans' diet, and there are so many different labels out there. So what do listeners focus on?
Yeah, that's great. So when it comes to chicken, sometimes they'll say like hormone free, but hormones aren't technically used in chicken and pork production. So that's kind of like just a distraction from maybe more important questions about what the animal, how their life was, or maybe what they were eating. And then we have cage free and free range, which are two of the ones that make me the angriest, even though you'll see them all the time, because basically this just means they might be in a warehouse, still crammed together on concrete, and they might have access to a door that might never be open, that they might not even know is there. They just have to have access. But the reality is there's still often thousands of animals just kind of living on top of each other. So we want to
police that though.
They don't really. I think it's just kind of they go to the facility and they see, oh, there is a door. And sometimes it leads just to a cement plot. Like, it's not what you would think it is. So that's sad. But if you look for pastured, generally there's some really awesome pastured chicken farmers. Cook's Venture, we work with some of them in our operation who are just going above and beyond. And they literally, these chickens live in these lush green pastures, and they just have beautiful lives. And they're actually working on the genetics of different breeds, and they're not using antibiotics, which is another big deal when it comes to chicken. You want to definitely watch the antibiotics. So there's some tricky labeling around antibiotics too. Raised without medically important antibiotics. That doesn't mean they're not raised with antibiotics, and they don't have antibiotic residues. That means they still could have been given antibiotics. There's trickery because people are waking up to the fact that consumers are looking at these things. But typically when it comes to chicken, we're going to look for pasture-raised chicken. And the same goes for pork, right? So pork, it's interesting. We have some really passionate pork farmers, and you can dramatically change the fatty acid ratio of pork just by their feeding practices. So they're, monogastric animals. And so they're going to have a little bit of grain, but when you put them on grass, you can significantly reduce the omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio. So pastured pork is what you'd look for there. Crate free doesn't always mean there's different types of crates. You have to see, are they including all different types of crates? And heritage is just a breed. Generally, heritage pigs wouldn't be raised in confinement, but it could happen, so there's these different names, but I would always look for pastured pork. Really hard to find, but we can talk about some great sources if you want to. And then when it comes to eggs, pasture-raised eggs too.
And does the same thing go for organic, non-organic? So, pasture-raised, organic, pasture-raised, non-organic,
you can find pasture-raised organic. I believe Vital Farms does it. And so that's best case scenario when you can find it, because they're not going to be using antibiotics and everything else. But you just have to kind of inquire with the company as well there. But tricky labeling, so many, and know that like if certified humane treatment of animal matters to you, then you want to actually get a third-party certification for that too. That's one that really matters to me a lot. And they'll say like raised humanely, but that isn't really policed unless it's like a certified humane certification for that.
Well, can I just say, listeners, Autumn knows her stuff big time. I love it. You're just like dropping so many nuggets to our listeners out there, and you definitely know your stuff. So we've talked about, those high quality ingredients. We've talked about grass-fed beef and, conventional beef. With that, because for me, some of the products that I love of Paleo Valley are their grass-fed bone broth, protein powder or collagen powder, and the beef sticks. But why does it matter? Why does, what's that difference between that grass-fed beef and conventional beef for human health in particular?
Oh, I love that question. So this is a hotly debated topic. I don't know So there are nutritional differences, but as you might imagine, the research is very nuanced, right? It depends on geography. It depends on the breed of the cow. It depends on what they're eating. We mentioned that grass-fed is not highly regulated. So there can be grass-fed animals who are then grain finished. There can be grass-fed animals on one type of grass. There can be grass-fed animals who spend their entire lives on, very diverse pastures with so many different types of nutrients. And so when you hear grass-fed doesn't have nutritional differences, I think, again, it depends on how that grass-fed animal was raised. But there are some clear trends, and the fatty acid profile of grass-fed beef definitely changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have more omega-3 fatty acids in grass-fed and finished beef. You're going to have a better omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio. You're also going to have more conjugated linoleic acid, which is a fatty acid known for its kind of anti-diabetic and anti-cancer basically metabolism beneficial properties. You're also going to see more antioxidants like glutathione. When it comes to mineral status, some studies show an advantage, others don't. But again, it's probably based on the quality of the soil that animal's being raised on. And we can talk about how agriculture can fix the soil. And then when it comes to other random vitamins, kind of like it just depends on the trial. But what I find really interesting, as I alluded to before, was these secondary compounds. They're things like terpenes and carotenoids and phenols that we typically associate with plants, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's many benefits: anti-diabetic, anti-cancer, antifungal, antibacterial, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. And there are thousands of them, tens of thousands of them. So what I think is so interesting is we basically track 13 nutrients on food labels. We have 150 that we track in databases, but there are thousands of nutrients that we are yet to discover. And what they're finding in the research is, depending on how diverse the pasture is, there can be significantly more secondary compounds in the meat of animals. And I think it's really exciting. And people have taken it one step further and kind of like, does this really matter for human health? Is there a difference when you eat the products? And there's some preliminary research. I'm going to actually be involved in some for my dissertation. But one study they did, you'll appreciate, this comes out of Australia. They looked at wild kangaroo versus CAFO beef, right?
Okay. Yep.
And then
CAFO beef?
Yeah, just confined animal feeding.
Oh, confined animal. Okay.
Confined animals. Yeah.
Yes.
And then they measured, everyone has a slight inflammatory rise after a meal. It's called a postprandial inflammatory response. So then they measured that for, it was a crossover trial. So they ate one thing for a period of time, and then they ate the other thing. And what they found was there was significantly more inflammation with the CAFO beef. And again, it's a confounded trial because it's not a beef to beef comparison, but it's actually going to be carried out with a researcher called Dr. Van Vliet, and they're going to dissertate, or they're kind of going to ascertain whether it was the kangaroo aspect or whether it was the eating aspect. Yep. But other research does suggest, maybe reduced levels of triglycerides and LDL. And then there was a trial in 2011 that showed, even though people will say the levels of omega-3 fatty acids are marginal in grass-fed beef, what they found was the levels in the body were significantly higher when the animal was fed grass. Yeah. So we're still parsing out exactly how that affects human health, but I think it's very promising. And I think it will only get better as we become more nuanced with the discussion and look at, rather than just grass-fed, we look at regeneratively raised versus CAFO, and just kind of nail in those details.
Yeah, look, Autumn, you're, talking about this stuff that most people haven't heard about. But, from my point of view, which I think is an important thing to note, is when we're in particular trying to reduce inflammation in the body, it's about that reducing that toxic load. Okay. And that toxic load can come from all different areas. And one of those areas is eating the wrong type of meat and eating that one that is not organic, or the one that is, corn fed or soy fed. And so that causes inflammation in the body. Corn, soy, non-GMO, GMO soy in particular, GMO corn in particular reduces, increases inflammation in the body. So making these little changes, it doesn't necessarily, it's really about that reducing that toxic load. And so I think it's important, even if the nutritional profile is not that different, at the end of the day, for me, it's reducing the toxic load. And I think that you do that with these quality ingredients. Look, one of my favorite products, as I think I just mentioned, was the bone broth collagen powder from Paleo Valley. Can you talk to the listeners about why this is so good for our bodies?
Yeah. So collagen is kind of like an undervalued nutrient in our world today. We're all eating muscle meats, but our ancestors and animals in the wild, they eat nose to tail, right? Mm-hmm. They take it all in, and it contains really powerful amino acids for gut healing and for, the production of our own collagen, for our skin health, for our gut health. Glycine, one in particular, is really fantastic because it actually promotes sleep and it kind of calms down the nervous system. Mm-hmm. And so this is a way that you can kind of support your gut health and anti-aging. And it's been shown to reduce cellulite and collagen specifically. And the reason I love it too is because it's a really simple way to add high quality protein to your child's diet that they don't even know is there.
They do not know that it is there. I use it all the time. I use it in so many different baked goods, smoothies. I even put it in meat sauce sometimes, or when I'm doing, a stew. And so it's fantastic.
Yeah. And what we changed about it, usually collagen is made from hides and hooves of animals. And it just involves a more extravagant process you might imagine with acids and solvents. And so we actually use the bones from animals and then just add water, basically boil them down. And so it's a very, very clean source from obviously regeneratively raised cows in America. But yeah, collagen, most people are not getting enough. And they find even that balancing with methionine and glycine and just can kind of act as a protective factor for cardiovascular disease. And so yeah, eating nose to tail is just something we've lost touch with, but I think we'd all benefit from bringing that practice back. And that's why we tried to make a really accessible powder that doesn't necessarily taste like bone broth for those who aren't accustomed to eating it.
And I've had other bone broth collagen powders and they taste like bone broth, but I have to tell you the Paleo Valley one doesn't. I have a subscription. I get it every month and I love it so much. So definitely. And it's also, when we talk about gut health, especially with kids with ADHD, that gut-brain connection is really, really, important that we optimize that, and anything that we can do to help that gut will definitely help that brain. But also those amino acids, are precursors to our neurotransmitters, and all of those neurotransmitters, especially with kids with ADHD, can be compromised.
Yeah, and I just want to say on that note, collagen, our bone broth protein powder, it will contain a little tryptophan, but it won't contain a lot. I think it will contain tryptophan. So it's not a complete source. And so it is a great source of protein, but you don't want it to make it your sole source of protein because there could be some serotonergic issues if you have low levels of serotonin, or tryptophan. So I just want to throw that out there. I love it as an adjunct, but don't make it your sole source.
100%. Completely agree with that. It's all about that balance. If you're going to eat collagen powder for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's not going to be good for you. It's like, I used to say that with coconut oil. Coconut oil is really great, but you don't want to eat too much of it. It's, it's all about that balance and that moderation for sure. Let's talk about some other superfoods that we can sneak in. I love Paleo Valley's super green powder. I have to say that I've tried many super green powders, and a lot of the time the kids can taste them, or a lot of the time they taste like greens. And so, but Paleo Valley's is so yummy. What are some, what's in the super greens powder that you've got, but what are some of the other ones that you can sneak in on a daily basis?
Awesome. Well, our greens powder, that was, once I got pregnant, I wanted an easy way to eat vegetables because nothing sounded good. But I kept going to the store and they'd have all these wheatgrass or cereal grass centric greens powders, which for me, it just ripped my stomach apart. And there's actually, it can contain a lectin called wheat germ agglutinin that has been linked to intestinal distress. And if you read the reviews on powders often that have cereal grasses, there is a lot of digestive discomfort. So,
I will say on that point, one of the big things that we change in diet is we go gluten free. I know a lot of wheat grass is gluten-free, but a lot of the time our kids are sensitive to wheat as well. And so, having that wheatgrass and that glutenin is gluten, that's a compound in gluten. I can totally understand that. So yours doesn't include wheatgrass.
No, and the other thing about that is it's a very cheap ingredient. So when you look at a greens powder, you'll see like they'll stack it. There'll be a ton, really wheatgrass heavy, and then just like a dusting of the other things. And so we're like, we just want it to be full of the good stuff. So we actually replaced that entirely with spirulina, the highest quality spirulina in the world. There's a lot of benefits to spirulina. It's got a great source of protein. It's actually been shown to help kids cognitively and with language and motor development. It helps kids on that detoxification note. There was a trial showing that it helped to detoxify arsenic, which is a great source of antioxidants. And so actually, I think like the world, well, they named it the food of the future, and it just helps to overcome malnutrition and is specifically useful if you are nutrient deficient. So we did high quality spirulina, but you have to be really careful with the quality there because that can be contaminated. And then we just added 22 other organic fruits and vegetables, blueberry, acerola cherry, a little turmeric, and just created a delicious powder. My son calls it his ninja juice. We drink it every day. It's funny because spirulina can be a really great source of copper too. And I don't know, you've probably talked about copper for, attentional issues and iron regulation. And I don't know if you've ever.
Well, I haven't talked about copper yet on the podcast, but I've talked about copper in other areas, but not on the podcast specifically.
Okay, cool. Well, my son actually, it was really surprising earlier this year. He had some low levels of iron when he was ill. And I talked to Morley Robbins, and he was telling me how important copper was to teach the body how to use iron. And so having that greens juice was just really important for him at that time. And I could tell it was a very energized effect physically and mentally for him. And there is some research to suggest it does just improve stamina. So just making it really easy to get your greens in, you're all eating from the rainbow. That's kind of the goal of that powder. We actually have a rainbow powder coming out to be like a second adjunct to that.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. But so that's the greens. And then my other favorite superfood is the organ complex for sure. That one we made because I heard about all the benefits of organ meats, even though most Americans don't want to eat them. They're literally nature's multivitamins. Look at the nutrient counts, like 30 times the B12, just like it blows other sources of meat out of the water, and especially vegetables and fruits and all of that. They're nutrient powerhouses, and they've been shown in like a little rat trial to improve stamina and endurance. And I'm not going to eat them. So we put them into capsules. And my little guy, once he was able to swallow pills, he takes them every day. And again, it gives him great stamina and focus, and is great for actually, there were some Nobel Prize winning scientists back in the 1930s, and they discovered that pernicious anemia could be cured by liver, and which sounds so crazy, but it's because it contains that vitamin A and the copper that help the iron to be used. So it's a really great way to kind of modulate low levels of iron, which, can manifest in a lot of different mental health and energy issues.
Definitely. Iron, low ferritin, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, we take it. That's one that's in our rotation as well. Kids will not really eat organ meat. And so, that high quality, B12 that is from food, not from, a synthetic vitamin, is why I love it so much. But, all of that stuff can also contribute, like a lot of kids with ADHD also have like methylation issues, and it's really, really helpful in fueling that process. I also love like the C complex, again, made from just superfoods. So I think, your mission is, absolutely amazing. And I mean, you're so knowledgeable on all of these products and but tying them with science, which I think is really important.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I'm obsessed. Once I learned that I could actually have a control over my health or my child's health, I just kind of really dug in, and like you did all the certifications, getting my doctorate, figuring out like, how do we make this fun and easy for people to kind of understand and create products that also make their lives easy. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I heard a rumor that you were coming out with a cereal.
Oh, we are. We are. I'm so excited. So yes, we actually wanted to create a collagen cereal that was high levels of protein, did not have any sugar. It's funny. There's like better versions of cereals coming out, but like my qualms with them are, one is a lot of them contain milk protein. And for some kids, that's fine. For other kids, it's not. It's like one of the most allergenic and reactive proteins. And so we took that out, and it'll just be collagen and like superfoods. We just got what I think is the second to last version. It just needed a slight bump on the spices. And then, we're going to have that. We're also doing sugar-free suckers for kids. We're just going in the kid direction because my little guy, he reacts to corn. There's corn in everything.
Yes.
He can't have a sucker. I feel sad about that because even, alternatives like xylitol and erythritol, they can be derived from corn too. So it's like, we literally didn't have any, but we have so many products. We have superfood bars. We have red velvet superfood bars. We have an electrolyte supplement. We are going to town. We have probably 10 products in the wings, and we've just been waiting because the supply chain has been so crazy.
Yeah, no, that's
soon.
Yeah. Why are superfoods so good? Let's just finish off this episode. Like, what is it? Like, let's talk about superfoods. Why are superfoods so good? What are they? What makes them great to bring into rotation in the diet?
Yeah, I think it's important because a lot of us are told, okay, don't eat sugar, don't eat this, don't eat that. And we're kind of like, okay, but at the end of the day, if you're not eating enough micronutrients, these vitamin A and magnesium and all of these nutrients that literally make your body go, run your metabolism, your immune system, your mental health. If we're missing those, we're not going to feel great. We're not going to have that vitality. And so we have to add the foods in as well that are really teeming with the nutrients that our body actually requires. And so I think organ meats are at the top of that list for sure. Really high quality animal products. There's this push away from meat, but it is one of the most bioavailable sources of protein. Amino acids, the precursor to our neurotransmitters. These nutrients are in, a way that our body can absorb. And so really high quality animal products, those are absolutely superfoods. And then greens, right? Like vegetables, fruits that are, eating from the rainbow, all of those different colors and those pigments, they're actually, they're acting in different ways in our body, giving us different benefits, feeding different bugs in our guts. And then we have things like fermented foods. I'm sure you will or have educated them about certain probiotics can actually produce GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that kind of calm things down that a lot of our children need more of. And so fermented foods, kind of a lost art, but I make my little guy, at first, he would just put it in his mouth and then I'd allow him to spit it out. This is something Elise Arnheim taught me. She's a fermented food expert.
Yes, I know. I know her. Yeah, she lives in Seattle.
Yes, she does, doesn't she? She's wonderful. So, and then he kind of got used to it, and now he'll have a few bites every day. Our beef sticks, funny enough, they're also fermented, but fermented foods are just, gut health is the most important aspect of our health, right? It drives our brain health, our physical health, and everything. So if we can improve the ratio of good bugs to bad bugs with what we're eating, fermented foods is a super simple way to do that. And then what we try to do with our products is just bring in superfoods that you wouldn't otherwise have access to, which is why we did like our vitamin C. It's amla berry, acerola cherry, and camu. It's like, you're not going to see that at the grocery store unless you're looking for these dried powders. And yet they are just a wealth. Like amla berry is revered in Ayurvedic medicine for many reasons. And unripe acerola cherry is the single greatest source of vitamin C. But nobody really knows where it is, right? And then turmeric, right? We bring in spices like turmeric and cinnamon and ginger and things that they are powerful. Like turmeric specifically, there has been trials showing that it's as powerful as 10 different drugs like Lipitor and anti-inflammatories. And there was even trials on Prozac, right? It worked as favorably as Prozac. And then when you combined it with Prozac, it was even better than either alone. And this is curcumin specifically, not turmeric. But I'm just saying, if we could find simple ways to get more of these really like nutrient dense and nutrient, not in the traditional sense with spices necessarily, but all of these, curcumin, all of these secondary compounds in these spices are powerful, right? And especially in the gut, everyone says, turmeric isn't that absorbed that well, so it's not that powerful, but it is doing many different things. Its metabolites are working hard in the gut. And you can see there's just the pharmacological effects of turmeric you can't even dispute them. And so, but kids aren't always going to want to eat them. So how do we bring them into the diet in a way that is fun or easy for them and
tastes good?
And taste good. And so that's what we've done. Just try and infuse every product with some other additional benefit rather than just eliminating the things that people don't want to see. Because at the end of the day, if you're just not eating things, that doesn't mean you're eating a nutrient dense diet. And that's ultimately what you need.
Yep. No, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Autumn. This has been so insightful, so educational as well. And your passion really, really shines through, and your knowledge. Thank you for sharing that with all of our listeners. Please tell listeners where they can find and follow you online.
Yes, you can come find me. You can always email me at autumn@paleovalley.com. We have, Facebook page and an Instagram page for Paleo Valley. And then I also have a business called Wild Pastures. You can find us there. And then if you're in the Denver or Boulder area, we just opened a restaurant.
Did you?
Yeah, we did. And it has no sugar in the whole place. It's, all from regenerative farms.
Amazing.
Grass finished. Yeah. And organic potatoes, gluten-free options, just the works. So come see us.
Well, I'll have to check that out next time I'm in Colorado, which I don't go to very often, but
call me. Yeah. I will. And I'll take you out. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you once again. We will try to get listeners a link in the show notes to a sort of a special offer if you want to give Paleo Valley a try. But listeners, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of The Soaring Child. I'm Dana Kate, your ADHD health practitioner. Keep on thriving. Thank you for listening to the Soaring Child podcast today. To learn more about how to help your child with ADHD soar using natural strategies, visit our website at adhdthriveinstitute.com and follow us on social media at ADHD Thrive Institute.